Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week on MMA Junkie, we take you on a quick spin through the week's news. And joining me this week are gorgeous George Garcia, Danny Segura, and Nolan King. And we've got a packed episode for you this week. So let's not mess around. Let's get straight into it. Starting things off this week is something that happened earlier this afternoon. We had a huge story break. Former UFC middleweight title challenger Yoel Romero is set to become a Bellator fighter. He's going to compete in the light heavyweight division. It's the latest big signing for Bellator, who recently signed Anthony Rumble Johnson just last week. So to kick things off this week, guys, give us your initial reaction to the signing of the Soldier of God to the Bellator ranks. And who do you want to see him fight on his Bellator debut? So we'll kick things off. 3 minutes on the clock. And George, you can go first.
All right, guys. I was happy, I guess, in a way, because they are stocking that division really nice with Corey Anderson a few months ago, Rumble Johnson, like Simon mentioned, and now Yoel Romero, man. That's massive. They even talk about Mousasi possibly moving up. But sorting it all out, Phil Davis, former champion, lost an MCOF. He's won 3 times since then. I'd like for him to get next. What do you do with the rest? How do you sort those guys out? I got to imagine that Corey Anderson is ahead of the latest 2 signings, but I would go Yoel Romero versus Corey Anderson and still take a good look at if Rumble can maybe fight Bader at some point, because they got history and Rumble has, I think, the flexibility to do 205 or heavyweight division. I think he'd be a massive heavyweight star for them. So that's how I would like for things to shake out, giving a little respect to Phil Davis, who's who's got the seniority there at Bellator. But great signing. I can't lie, though. I really thought he was going to go to PFL. I thought it would have been big for them there, too.
Yeah, well, if there's anyone who's got an opinion on this, it's got to be the mayor of Uncasville, the man inside the Bellator bubble. Nolan King, give us your take, my man.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think it was interesting, right? Because Scott Coker was sticking to that whole MO of we're not going to sign UFC or older, fighters that are getting up there in age that may be past their prime. And he made an exception here. And if you're going to make an exception to your new rule, why not have it be Yoel Romero? I'm all for it, guys. Sure, he's like 1-3 in his last 4, but he's fought all top tier guys, UFC champions, and they were pretty close fights, many of them. So I'm about it. As far as the matchup goes, the question is, who do I want to see him fight first? And this is not going to be who they give him, but I would love to see him and Rumble go at it. I think that fight doesn't make any sense, and that's why I love it. I think it would just be all sorts of craziness that we need in our lives. Just inject that fight into my veins. That would be phenomenal. A lot of muscle, a lot of power, and a lot of weirdness, and I would be so here for it.
I disagree with you, Nolan. That makes complete sense. That's the fight I want to see as well. Danny, what about you?
Look, those are great fights, but let's keep in mind, this is Yoel Romero's first fight at 205 pounds in quite a while. We've never seen him at that weight in some time. So I'd like to get, some Joe Smith, some guy that perhaps we don't really know, not a Rumble, not a Corey Anderson. Just get a guy that will give him a little bit of a challenge just so he can get his feet wet, just so he can try out how the division feels, how 205 pound feels and all that. Training also at 205 pounds. So look, also, this is the man of the highlight reel. Let's build on that and let's get a nice little package going before he takes on these, solid big name contenders. So I love your ideas, but I think we should just hold off on those for a bit.
Yeah, if you want someone on the Bellator roster who could maybe give that a go, Luke Chadwick from my side of the pond might be up for a bit of that. He's at 205. He wants a big name, so maybe he is the man to look at next. But let's move on to what happened this past weekend. Saturday night's main event between Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno served up one of the fights of 2020 as the pair battled to a majority draw after 5 crazy rounds at UFC 256. Guys, you watched it same as I did. How the hell do you score a fight like that? How did you score a fight like that? Did you agree with the point deduction? And do you agree that we absolutely have to see them run this thing back as soon as possible in 2021? Or do you think that the UFC might go a different route? In which case, who should he fight instead? We'll do 3 more minutes on the clock. So there's a lot to unpack there. Nolan, you can lead us off.
Yeah, I scored it personally. I scored it 48-46 for Figueiredo, but I can't argue with the draw scoring either. I think that those were both acceptable scorecards in a certain regard. We talked about this earlier on MMA Junkie Radio, but the judging, right? If you break it down by round, one of the judges had kind of a funky scorecard in terms of the rounds that he gave to Figueiredo and to Moreno. So you can have that technical breakdown and argue scorecards, but I think generally speaking, 47-47 or 48-46 were fine. I had it 48-46. In terms of the point deduction, I think I'm all about it. I think that we need to see that become more of a norm in MMA. I think the only reason that it stood out and it was maybe, people disagreed with it is because referees haven't really been following that standard. But I'm about it. I think that it would be good for the sport to have repercussions for fouls so that, guys are more careful not to do things like that. I think it's a pretty simple equation. So I was about the point deduction. And as far as running it back, I think that the fight should be, that's the fight to make. There's no other flyweight fight right now. Garbrandt can be put on hold. Manel Cape can be put on hold. Let the division figure itself out. But those two need to fight. As far as the timeline, not really sure. I think they've taken their fair share of fights here at the end of 2020. So give them some time to rest. I want the best versions of each that we can possibly see, but book it when they're both ready.
What do you reckon, Danny? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I scored it actually a draw. I thought it was 47-47. I thought Moreno took rounds 2 and 4, and I thought Davison Figueiredo took obviously 1, 3, and 5. However, with the point deduction, that's how you end up with a 40-47 score. And to be honest, I thought the point deduction was perfectly fine. I actually want to see more of it because, these guys are warned in the locker room about these fouls and that they could potentially cause, point deductions within the fight. So there shouldn't be another warning. Like, you were already warned prior to stepping in the cage, so you know what's up. And also, look, it gave us a draw, which is awesome because this was a fantastic fight. Easily the best fight we've ever seen in the men's 125-pound weight class. One of the best fights we've seen this year. It's between that or Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So I want to see a rematch. And look, the draw just guaranteed us a rematch. So I'm all in for that fight. I think that's the fight that should happen next. I don't think Cody Garbrandt or anybody else can step in there and sort of disrupt that order. I think maybe the only one that may have a case is if Henry Cejudo comes back from retirement or Demetrius Johnson re-signs with the UFC or something like that. But that rematch should be set, and we should see that next.
George, give us your quick 20-second take, my man.
All right. Well, I don't want to see it right away. I mean, I'd love to see neither guy take a fight and then for them to fight sometime this summer, give them the proper rest that they deserve, and let's just get to that point. But I'm either way, I think good points were made. If Cejudo comes in, that's the type of interrupter that's out there. I scored it 47-47, and I did love the point being taken away. Fouls had accumulated. You got to do it.
Yeah, I had it 47-47 as well. I thought it was a super close fight. My fight of the year. I can't wait to see the rematch in 2021. It was a night full of incredible fights, full of headlines, and the co-main event delivered plenty of intrigue for the UFC lightweight division. Charles Oliveira defeating Tony Ferguson, immediately called for the winner of the Conor McGregor-Dustin Poirier matchup at UFC 257. Is that the right call out for Charles Oliveira right now, considering the state of the UFC lightweight division? Or is he going to have to set his sights on someone else first before he maybe gets a crack for a fight that'll probably be for the title at that point? What's next also for Tony Ferguson right now? We don't know where he's going to be and where he's going to go in 2021. Give us your take on that as well. Got to be quick, though. 2 minutes on the clock for this one. And Danny, you can lead us off.
Simon, to answer your question, yes and no. It was the right decision in the sense of, on a sporting side, it makes complete sense. I mean, Khabib's out. We don't know if he's going to come back or not. So the UFC is not doubling down and making Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor for the interim title or undisputed. So likely if Khabib doesn't return, it's going to be a variation of the winner of Conor versus Poirier versus someone else for the title. And that someone else should definitely be Charles Oliveira. Makes complete sense. However, do you really think Conor is going to take a fight with Charles? Charles is a relatively unknown guy with the casuals. So I don't know. And maybe if Poirier wins, then that's also a tough question as well. So I'd like to see him take the winner, but who knows? And as far as what's next for Tony Ferguson, I don't know. I think time will tell. I think he should take some time off and then take a step down, maybe fight RDA again or someone who's still a top guy, but maybe not in the top 5. But I definitely still like to see Tony Ferguson back at some point, just not against a top 5.
What do you reckon, George?
I would say I love the old school way of doing things, winners versus winners, meaning coming off your previous fight. And in this case, Tony, having taken a loss, I'm probably going to look to book him against the loser of McGregor versus Poirier. It would be fresh, and I think veterans would like to fight veterans, even if it's under those types of circumstances. As far as who's next, Man, that's a tough one. I love the point by Danny. Is Charles Oliveira really, really going to get somebody to go out there and call him out? I like better, I think, RDA, because he's a former champion. He's just got bigger stature in the game, unfortunately, for Charles Oliveira. But Oliveira looked great.
Nolan, give us 20 quick seconds. What do you reckon?
I respect the call out by Charles Oliveira. I think it's smart of him to put himself in that conversation at least. But, you know, the UFC is not going to go with that. They're not going to have McGregor and Poirier fight and then one of them fight Charles Oliveira. You still got Michael Chandler. You still got Justin Gaethje in the mix with Khabib if Khabib is out of the picture. As far as who Tony Ferguson fights next, I like George's idea the best. But my 1B would also be Paul Felder. I think that would be an interesting fight. That
would be an outstanding fight. And it gets Felder, a guy who is right up there at the top of the division. I like the sound of that a lot. Right. With the UFC stating that as many as 60 fighters could be set for the chop before the end of the year, guys, all eyes were on some of the fighters on that card at the weekend. Coming towards the end of their career, they've got veteran status, highly paid contracts. Junior Dos Santos kind of fit that bill when he suffered his 4th straight TKO loss. The former UFC heavyweight champion being finished by Cyril Gane on Saturday, leading Dana White to admit that Cigano may have to address his fighting future sooner rather than later. Now, if you were sitting down with Cigano, one of the nicest guys in the sport, sit down with a man, what would you tell him right now if he turned around and said, guys, what on earth should I be doing next? It's a tough one, a tough conversation. 2 minutes on the clock for this one. George, what would you say?
Well, we already did the route where he takes on a newcomer because he had the 3-fight losing streak against some of these veterans. And that didn't go well with Cyril Gane. So, man, what's left? I don't know. But he's still pretty marketable. And if he still wants to be in the UFC and I'm advising him, then I'm supporting him. Then I'm probably telling him, hey, look, just pick up somebody coming off a loss. He's always going to be relevant. Just at this moment alone, he's got to win over Derek Lewis, Blagoy Ivanov, and Stipe Miocic. I'm not saying he's a contender for the title or anything like that. I'm just pointing out that he's always going to be relevant as long as he's around. However, if he's telling me, look, I'm willing to look outside the UFC, then once again, I do like the PFL format, especially where you can be busy in a year and there's $1 million waiting for you at the end. Hell, go mix it up with your boy Verdum.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. JDS in the PFL. Nolan, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think JDS has to have a conversation with people around him about what his fighting future, what's the goal here, right? I'm not sure it's realistic to think that he has any sort of path back to the title. I hate saying that. I respect him so much, but he's also going to be smart here, right? So I would say definitely he has to have a game plan of what his fighting future holds. You know, if he goes out there and gets knocked out again, I think he's going to call it quits. But I like the idea of him going somewhere else, PFL, Bellator, somewhere where he has new challenges. He can still be competitive, but not be somebody that is just essentially someone the UFC throws to stars that they're trying to build. So yeah, that's kind of what I would tell him.
What do you reckon, Danny? One more run in the UFC, or maybe a new chapter somewhere else? What do you think?
He's already had so many chapters and runs in the UFC, and he's fought for the title several times, and he's been unable to recapture it. I think at this time, he suffered many tough losses. He's had a lot of mileage put on him, throughout his career. Let's not forget about those wars with Cain Velasquez, right? And, he's 36 years old. So, I wouldn't hate if he decides to hang up the gloves. If he doesn't, look, I still think he fights very smart. He's got experience. He's got power. He's got speed. The only thing he's missing is the chin. So if you're going to continue fighting, at least maybe go to another organization where maybe you can get a little bit more favorable matchups. But him taking on this up-and-comers, these killers that we see in the UFC, I just don't exactly want to see that. And again, all respect to Cigano. Love the guy. But, Father Time catches everyone.
It really does. It really does. And be interesting to see what happens with JDS next time out. And finally, guys, this weekend sees the final UFC event of a crazy year, 2020. A stacked card at the UFC Apex for UFC Fight Night 183. A host of fighters all kind of on the verge, sort of trying to get themselves into championship contention in their respective weight classes. Have a look down the fight card for us, guys, and let us know which of those fighters involved on Saturday night is going to be the first of that group to get a shot at a title following this weekend's event. Little bit of MMA soothsaying we need here. 2 minutes on the clock, so 40 seconds each. Nolan, you can lead us off.
Now, I know I'm going to get called out here for being a homer, as some people around here would say, but I'm going to go with Rob Font. I think if he were to go out there and beat Marlon Moraes this week, it puts him in a very good position in 135 pounds. I know the field is so deep there, so many good fighters, but Font's trajectory over the years has just been, you know, it's been bumpy, but it's been upward. So I think a year off training with Calvin Cater, focusing, they have a really small camp. They focus on themselves. They're you know, who the camp revolves around are those two guys. So I think we're going to see the best version of him we've seen. Beating Marlon Moraes would put him very close to the top of that division and into another major fight for him.
Yeah, that would be a huge win if you can get that done on Saturday. Danny, what about you?
I'm going to go with Marlon Chito Vera. I mean, the guy is 6-1 in his last 7 fights. He's fighting in the co-main event of the card. He's taking on Jose Aldo, obviously a legend in the division, in the lower weight classes. So look, a win over him will definitely put him in a nice spot. We also know that it seems the UFC is really sort of having a liking with him. They had him in the co-main event for UFC 252 where he fought Sean O'Malley. So that was a big fight for him. And now they reward him, you know, with a fight that he asked for, which was Jose Aldo. So I think Marlon Chito Vera is right there. A win over Jose Aldo would definitely put him in a good spot. He could very well be, after that, 1 win away and then be fighting for the title. So I'm going to go with Chito.
Great shout. George, what do you reckon?
Well, since I get to go last, I'm going to take 2 of them here. I think Taila Santos, great record, 16-1. You know, it seems like those divisions aren't as deep, and I'm talking about the women's MMA divisions in the UFC, save for maybe the strawweight. There's some killers there. So that's kind of like, you know, maybe an easy way out. I'm backing into the answer, but man, Marlon Moraes has put his time in, and if he can get past Rob Font, he's always going to be considered one of the top 3 guys in the division. So I think I'm going to go with Marlon Moraes on this one.
Yeah, there's a few different options in there. Obviously, Wonder Boy and Jeff Neal in the main event as well, looking to work their way back to the top of that 170-pound division. We will have full coverage, of course, all week long on MMA Junkie of UFC Fighting Out 183. Be sure to keep it locked. We'll be back to unpack it all rather next week. Big thank you to George, to Danny, to Nolan, and to you guys for checking us out. We'll speak to you again next week.